Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest in the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Richard Hallman on the line. He's a professional adventure sports photographer over at richardhallman.com. Richard, welcome to the show.
Adam, grateful to be here. Thank you.
All right, Richard. So I'm grateful to have you here and to get into some of your content and to announce to our audience that you'll be one of our upcoming authors in our latest Mission Matters book release. So excited to get into that and to also talk about your work. So I was talking to you kind of in the warm up, and I've been talking to people about you all week. I was like, Richard has these pictures and all these things you've been able to accomplish, and these amazing photographs of these professional athletes and these extreme athletes that you've managed to capture. I mean, I got to hear the stories behind some of these. But before we get started on that, we'll start this episode the way that we start them all with our Mission Matters Minute. So, Richard, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Richard, what mission matters to you?
Well, I've done a lot of different things in my life, and landing in as finally as a professional photographer here, it's just been a lifelong dream. And I love telling stories. I love sharing my experience, and I find myself in very unique situations that not a lot of people can find themselves in. So to bring that experience back to general audience is just really amazing, and really grateful to help inspire people and to get out and enjoy what's out there in the world.
Amazing. And we're going to get into these unique experiences because that's an understatement. But I want to start a little further back, though. Like, when did that become a thing for you? Like, when did you know this is something that you wanted to make a career? How did that take place?
Yeah, I've been into photography all my life. We had a darkroom in our house growing up. My dad taught me how to develop black and white film, print pictures, and my older brother wasn't so into it, and so I just have one sibling, and so my dad made that really accessible to me. And so, yeah, I seem to always have a camera in my hand, even from a young age. But that's something that maybe only one in a million billion people can be that National Geographic photographer or whatever. So I pursued a lot of different things, and I moved to Colorado after college. I became an EMT. I was a ski patroller, but all the time I always had a camera with me. And so I moved to Hood River about 30 years ago, and went to nursing school. I was an ER nurse, but that allowed me, I was working 12-hour shifts, and I had a lot of time off. And that time off, I started spending more and more with my camera and such. So, and then I do a lot of adventure sports. And I'd say that where my abilities kind of stop, I'm able to pick that up with these extreme athletes that take all those sports that I do to that highest level. So I keep engaged in that, and I'm able to share that experience with people. And so that's back in 2004, I was hired to be a photographer on a trip to New Zealand, kind of a last minute thing. And while I was on that trip, we were taking a helicopter up to the Cook Glacier, and we were snow kiting above the clouds, looking out over Australia, and so had this, epiphany, like, wow, I'd like to maybe try and do this, as a full-time thing. And so, so I haven't looked back.
So I want to stick in those earlier years a little bit longer, because I know when I was growing up, so I was an artist. That's what I love doing. I love airbrushing, I love designing, and I was kind of, I was in the same mindset as yourself, and maybe some of the things that you had in the past, where you were thinking like, well, to be that photographer in your case, or that person that can really make money, like it's not possible. Like, it's like, okay, that's very slim chances. But now I feel like we're in this renaissance of just creators, like people that have that inclination to want to be a photographer or an artist or other things like that. Like they have opportunity. There's different ways to do it. So like what kind of things would you say to that next group of, let's just say, photographers and or creatives?
Wow. I mean, that's it. I've been able to experience a unique time in history because, uh, you know, for my early background was just, you take your pictures, you take your film, and you get that developed, and I would be on trips over in Nepal climbing, and I would be taking my photos, and I couldn't just look at the camera and see what I got.
Yeah.
It would take me weeks and weeks until I got
Wow.
back, got that developed, and that wasn't that long ago,
Mhm.
that was not that long ago. And so, I jumped into it still when digital was still in its infancy, and
Mhm.
the digital cameras were just starting to kind of come up to speed and kind of meet
Mhm.
that quality that was with analog, and so and now it's just exploded way past that, and
Yeah.
it's so I see young content creators today that have just endless endless abilities
Mhm.
to expand that creative process, with video, with
Mhm.
AI, with all kinds of stuff. So I mean, the sky's the limit. I mean,
Yeah.
you know as a photographer, you can have a drone now, and you can do your video stuff. So it's hard to compete with some of these young kids that are coming out of college, and they can build websites, and they can do all these amazing things and put together all this great content. And
Mm.
for me, I just say I'm still just a still photographer, but yeah, for people getting into it now, I mean, and the technology has gotten less expensive. You
Mhm.
know, early on in my career, those high end digital cameras were super expensive, and
Yeah.
so only the professionals, unless you had a lot of discretionary income,
Mhm.
could afford, some of these cameras and stuff. Well, now, those same chips, those same memory things that were in those most expensive cameras are, really reasonable,
Yeah.
and so you can get a, pretty entry level camera, and it's going to do a lot for you. And so I think that's leveling the playing field a lot.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the next generation of, and it's not that long ago, we're talking
Yeah.
like, about that transition time when I quit nursing was about 2004. And from there to today, I see, man, month to month, year to year, like
Yeah.
crazy out there. Yeah.
Yeah, as of the recording of this, that new iPhone in 2022, that new
Yeah.
iPhone 14 Pro or something like that, I'm like,
Yeah.
man, I can't even imagine what the iPhone 20 is gonna look like, right? In X amount of years going forward. It's gonna be
Well, I
it'll be
mean,
something else.
I
Yeah.
mean, I'm under the impression that maybe I don't know, maybe not in my lifetime, but
Yeah.
maybe somewhere down the road that there's going to be a way where you're going to be able to just blink your eye,
Mm.
and then that is going to show up on a screen
Yeah.
or something. I mean, who knows? I mean, I was reading an article yesterday where James Earl Jones is
Mm.
retiring from the voice of Darth Vader, and he's
Ah.
been doing that, since the 70s. And so,
Mm.
but his character and his voice is going to live on because
Mhm.
they're going to use AI to extrapolate, old clips of him speaking and
Wow.
create new dialogue. So he's going to live on. He doesn't have to be there. And the scarier part, I say scary because I feel like it threatens my livelihood and lifestyle, or whatever, to make money with creating content
Mhm.
is, and the technology is there, and it's going to be available to so
Yeah.
many people soon, where in AI, where there's going to be programs where people can go in and say, look, they look at one of my photos of, say, Kai Lenny, who's a
Mm.
one of the highest end watermen, extreme athletes,
Mm.
surfs some of the biggest waves in the world. You're going to look at that, and you're going to go, wow,
Yeah.
I want to go, I would love to go there, but I can't go
Mhm.
there, whatever. So I'm going to create my own big wave surf shot, and
Yeah.
then you can type in big wave, and then you can bring up a selection of all kinds of different big waves. Got your wave, and then you say, I want a male surfer or female
Yeah.
surfer or whatever. There's going to be a female surfer, and you're going to be able to build an image
Mm.
you're going to be able to build an image, not just a painting or whatever, but it's going to look like a photograph,
Yeah.
and that's the reality. And that's kind of,
It's interesting to me. And I wanna,
yeah.
speaking of some of the athletes and the situations you've been in, you mentioned kind of briefly helicopters, summits. I mean, give us a flavor for some of the type of shoots and the type of work you do for those that haven't seen your pictures yet. And for everybody, I know this is an audio podcast, right? But we'll be putting a link to Richard's Instagram in the show notes. Definitely go check that out. And so you can see some of these photos and the experiences that we're talking about today. But so Richard, tell us a little bit more about some of these experiences.
Well, yeah, Adam, I think some of the most exciting stuff that I get to do is heli ski photography up in Alaska, or shooting big waves, of course, because these are truly extreme situations where you're, with up in Alaska, we're flying and we're landing on peaks where sometimes no one's ever been there before.
Wow.
When you're flying up,
What's that feeling like to be somewhere that no one's ever been in, to know that?
It's unbelievable. And people might scratch their head and say, well, that's probably impossible because, we've traveled and we've explored and we've done so much. But when you're actually up there, you're looking out at the Chugach mountain range up in Alaska, and it really is, as far as the eye can see, it is just this, it's just all mountain peaks above the trees. And it goes on forever and forever. And so, as and the amount of acreage that their permit area is, that these different heli operations is mind-boggling. And you could spend your entire life just at one of these operations, and you could not ski every single mountain that's in their permit period. And so, sometimes when the snow hasn't been that great, they fly deeper and deeper into different zones. And, and I've had pilots before go, yeah, we've never been over here before. And, and so, yeah, we land down. They're like, yeah, you guys can name this run, this is your, this is your run. This is your,
wow.
This is your first descent, and then sometimes as a photographer, I'm shooting, some of these extreme athletes like, Seth Westcott, for instance. He's a 2-time Olympic gold medalist and an incredible snowboarder. And so in photographing him back in 2006, I had the heli pilot drop these guys off over a peak, and then they took me to an adjacent peak where it was literally 90 degrees off of all sides, and there's no way to go anywhere. And the helicopter came in and hovered, and then I got out right on this little precipice, and then the helicopter just pulled away. And of course, they're messing with me. They're waving, yeah, see you later.
Oh, I can't. My heart right now, Richard. I'm like, okay, like what goes through your mind?
Yeah, but I'm up there with my camera, getting what they call a Barbie shot. It's shooting across the valley and getting the entire big scene. And so yeah, there I am all alone. Once the heli peels away, it's all quiet, and you're like, wow, like no one's ever been here ever before. I'm sitting on this rock, looking at these rocks, like, like they're, I don't know, like they're organic. They're, it's a crazy experience. And then, yeah, after his run's done, the helicopter comes back and it looks so tiny, and then it comes in closer and closer. And then it just hovers, and I step right in, and off we go. So, yeah. And then, to flip over to big wave stuff, I'm not up in a helicopter, per se, but I'm out on a jet ski, and a lot of times there's a deep water channel right next to the wave break. So it's basically like you're on the side of a runway, and there's a 747 coming in and landing right next to you, and that's the sound and the power.
Wow.
These waves have. We're talking 40, 50, 60-foot waves. That so yeah, I'll be on a jet ski, and I have a driver, and that driver's he's on the lookout for, rogue sets coming in, but we're pretty close to the action. We're right on the side of the wave. And as the wave rolls through, it's breaking right in front of us. And then we're going up the swell, and then over the back of the top, and so sometimes when big sets come in, you're sitting right in front of the break at that point. Or at Jaws, if, sometimes shooting different angles, I'll be over on the left side, and you are truly in front of the wave. Like you have to really have your eyeballs, screwed in tight on that one, because once that wave breaks and you're getting that photo, we have to not go slowly. We have to race out, and we have to meet that wave before it breaks and get up and over that, So yeah, definitely, capturing the images is almost as exciting as, the athlete that's in the images,
Oh, it's awesome. Do you ever
Yeah.
get scared, like, out there? Like, have you had those moments where you're like, "Okay, this is getting a little dicey?"
There's it just puts you in the moment. Like
Mm,
there's no room for thoughts of, oh my
yeah.
God, I forgot to pay my taxes, or I forgot to do this, or whatever. Like you are truly in the flow state. You're truly in that
Mhm,
moment, and it's really surreal. It's not
mm,
until afterwards. It's almost like afterwards I start to process some of that,
mhm,
whatever that fear or whatever. And it's good to have, it's good to have a little bit of fear, that keeps you on your toes and whatnot. But
mhm.
in the moment, Adam, it's sometimes, I'm just in such awe. Imagine it being a gamer and you're in
Yeah.
this like extreme game situation, and it's almost feels like that. It almost feels like,
Mhm,
well, nothing can really go wrong here. Of course, anything could go wrong at any second, but in that moment,
mhm.
it's so fascinating, the level of, like, wow, like this is actually happening on this planet. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, just sitting there, like watching these waves come in, just being in that
Mhm.
environment, you're like, wow, this is, and that's why I get so excited about that I want to, share
Mhm.
that with people. So
I feel like I guess you're kind of in the zone, and because you're an athlete as well yourself, so you've been in these situations both as an athlete and then, as you mentioned, kind of as a photographer, work with these professionals. So I guess it's a kind of a unique vantage point, and because you're an athlete as well, I feel like you must have just a different level of respect for some of these men and women that you're taking photographs of, because you understand what it takes to actually do what they're doing, right?
yeah, yeah, and I think I'm fortunate that my imagery might be set apart a little bit because I do the sports, and so I kind of know what I can anticipate what they're doing and what they're going to do next,
Mhm.
because I've done it, and and I understand the dynamics of the
Mm.
sports, and so I think that gives me a leg up on maybe someone else who doesn't do the sports but is very much interested in photographing it. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think that helps me greatly. But I'm definitely not a professional at any
Yeah.
one of the sports that I do. But
Is there a favorite, sport you like covering, or athlete, or just environment that you like shooting in? Is there a
yeah,
favorite?
that's a really tough question, and I
I
think
know, I did it on purpose, by the way. That's
yeah,
like that's like someone asking me, "So what's your favorite podcast episode or guest?" I'm like, "Come on."
yeah, that's not
It's
fair.
terrible, but I asked it on purpose.
Yeah, because yeah, you're right. Like with the podcast,
Mhm.
there's so many differences, and there's so many
Yeah.
things that you like about this and like about that
It's like,
that
choose between your
you
kids,
can't
which one do you
compare
like?
apples to oranges. So, but it's it's hard. I mean, it's like the
Mhm.
two things that I kind of landed on there was extreme skiing in Alaska and big
Mm,
waves. I mean, I think it would have to come down to one of
yeah.
those two things. I mean, I work closely with Kai Lenny, who's like I said, an extreme waterman from Hawaii, from the North Shore of Maui, and yeah, he's insane. A multidiscipline athlete. He
Mhm.
windsurfs, kiteboards, he wings, he surfs big waves. There's nothing that this kid can't do, and so I
Mhm.
love working with him because he is such a master at so many different water sports. So if there's no big
Mm.
waves, but there's a windy day, we'll go out and he'll be kiteboarding and he'll jump off a wave and be 30, 40 feet in the air, doing backflips and whatever. And then he'll go in and then he'll trade out for his wing. And a wing is a surfboard with a mast and a foil on it. So they ride above the surface of the water. And when, it's kind of like skiing powder because
Oh,
you eliminate all the chop of the water and you're just floating on the surface. And he'll go out there and he'll throw a backflip on that, and whatever. And then he'll, come in and then, whatever. I mean, anything you can throw at him, he does at such a high level. So we can do all these different sports and, and
mm.
enjoy the environment in a way that, not a lot of people can do. So,
Man, talk about not being stuck in the office, Richard.
yeah. Yeah. I'm sitting there in my jet ski or sitting there, or whatever. And then I get to chuckle and say, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm in my office right now.
Oh, man, you make me think back to my days as a financial advisor once upon a time in that office and doing what we do, and now I'm in the studio stuck. I'm like, "Come on, man, what did I do wrong? I should be out." No, seriously though, much respect. I know I couldn't get out there do anything like that, and I'm like, and it's just really interesting to me to see the different vantage points of experiences and people how they choose to spend their day to day, and also the art they create, because you're really creating art. You're documenting not only these amazing athletes, but also the sports themselves. So is there any out of all the sports that you've been covering, because for so long, been in the industry for a long time, any evolution of a particular sport that you care to comment on that you're just like, wow, like this started with, here and now to see what it's grown into? Because you are a historian of sorts just from being even part of that community. Any sports that are just like you care to comment on?
Well, well, a couple different things. I
Yeah.
think wind sports, when I grew up on Lake Michigan, I grew up windsurfing on Lake Michigan. And
Mhm.
so in the early 80s, I had an old windsurfer Rocket 99. And for those people listening that know what that is, I mean, that's a relic of the early windsurf days. And I remember having my windsurf magazine and reading about Robbie Nash. He's one of the, premier legend windsurf gods, out there, and so along came kiteboarding in the late 90s, early 2000s. There were a couple. There was a French guy, and then there was a gentleman named Corey Reisler, who's actually here in Hood River, who was out. They were trying to figure out using a kite to pull you on, whether it's a water ski or a surfboard or whatever, and that sport evolved into kiteboarding, and now kiteboarding is worldwide, and it's just and then you thought that was it. Now like I look out at the Columbia River Gorge, which is a premier water sports. We've got prevailing west winds that come down the gorge, on the Columbia River between Oregon and Washington in the summertime, and you can get wind out there daily, and it's averaging 30 miles an hour. And so there can be 5,000 people out on the water enjoying the water, whether it's windsurfing or kiteboarding. But now you have this wing thing where they've got the surfboard with the foil on it, and they've got a kind of a handheld kite, sort of what it is. It's called wing. So I've been watching these new sports just grow or organically out of nothing, or out of progressing from one water sport to another. And just when you think that, well, we've invented everything, no, we haven't. Like it's just it's changing and growing, and just and so I look out in the river now, and just in the last couple of years, you almost see more wingers out there than you do anything else. It's phenomenal. And then the other thing, speaking of evolution, is big wave surfing. I mean, you take a place like Jaws, where Laird Hamilton and Dave Kalama and some of these legend watermen from back in the 80s, they were tow surfing Jaws. It was thought that this wave could not be paddled into. You couldn't self-propel you into big waves. And right about the time that I started shooting big waves was right about the time when Shane Dorian, who's a legendary surfer, and some others, looked at that wave and said, I think we can paddle this. And
Wow.
so actually watched, some of the first people to ever self-propel, self-paddle into some of these, big waves. And so I've actually been able to watch big wave surfing sort of grow as a sport. And you got these guys with the surfboards are really, really long, like you're thinking California coast, little chest high, head high waves. You got these people on 6 foot, 7 foot boards. These are like 10 foot, 11 foot, they call them guns, and they're really narrow, they're long, and you need that board surface area, that stroke, to be able to get the speed, because those waves are moving at such great speed that you start to match that speed to be able to get up and drop into these waves. Once you get up on that wave, they would be happy to have a short board, because now you're up on the wave and you got all the power and you want that ability to turn. So it's amazing to watch these guys maneuver these really big boards on these massive waves. And so, I was able to watch that at Jaws, where they thought no one could ever paddle that, and now everybody's paddling it, and so I was able to watch all that.
The evolution, Richard. You should write a book. Oh, speaking of which,
Yeah, yeah.
had to. That's my transition for today, Richard. I do want it. We're just going to spend a minute or two talking about the upcoming book and some of the things and the ideas you plan to propose. And for everybody watching this, just to know, this is the first part of a two-part interview. We will be bringing Richard on for a full interview where we'll do a deep dive into his writing ideas and also go talk further into also what he's doing over at richardhallman.com. But for now, Richard, tell us a little bit more about some of the ideas that you plan to propose in the upcoming book.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this book opportunity. Really appreciate this opportunity. Moving forward, I'm just looking for ways to, sort of not only grow my business. I mean, that's just sort of a given, but I'm looking for, looking to take all these new technologies and everything and kind of see how I can extrapolate into, into the sports and, and kind of get to that, like where is this content, uh, driven, world, I mean, they estimate that 1.6 billion photos are uploaded to the internet every day, and so there's so much content out there. So how do you set yourself apart, from everybody else to say, no, get your eyeballs on what I'm doing here. So, so it's a work in progress and, just trying to,
I
trying
totally
to
get it, and I'll stop you there because I want people to buy books too. We're not going to give them too
yeah,
much on this one, but I do think just like you've been a part of the sports in your community as you have, and that's why I asked you that question earlier about how you've seen the evolution, because you really have. I mean,
yeah,
you've been documenting this not just through your photos. I mean, that's been your primary medium up to this point, but I was really excited when I learned that we had the opportunity to then publish some of your ideas as well, so that you can also cross over into that medium, into books and book publishing. So I'm excited to get that book out and to introduce it to our audience, to also let them see your work as well. That being said, Richard, it's been great having you on the show today, learning more about your background, what you do, and also to promote the upcoming book. If people want to learn more and to connect with you, I mean, what's the best way for people to follow your work?
I my biggest presence is on Instagram. So Richard Hallman, all one word, _photo, is my Instagram handle. And then my website is Richard Hallman, all one word.com.
Fantastic. And we'll put all that information in the show notes so that our audience can just click on the links and head right on over and definitely check out your work. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters or engaging with the platform, we're all about bringing on entrepreneurs, executives, and experts and having them share their mission, their work, the reason behind their work, like why they get up and why do they do what they do. And more importantly, how are they giving back with it? If that's the type of information or content that you find interesting or exciting, hit that subscribe button, because we have many more mission-based individuals coming up on the line and we don't want you to miss a thing. Richard, again, excellent having you on the show. Can't wait to the second part of this two-part series we have on you. So thanks again for coming on.
Great, Adam. Thanks for having me today.